Welcome to our ESPN 1025 The Game on-demand Titans Roundtable. This week we got a lot to get into. Derrick Henry has signed his franchise tender. Plus, of course, we heard from Titans General Manager John Robinson and Mike Vrabel. I'm Jared Stillman. Turron Davenport, ESPN.com is with us. And Joe Rexrode from The Athletic is with us as well. We'll hit a bunch of different topics, and we'll go from there breaking down the Titans this week. We start, of course, with the big news. Derrick Henry signs his franchise tag tender. He'll play for $10 million and change this season unless the Titans work out a long-term deal. The general manager, John Robinson, was optimistic this week they will get a deal done. So, Joe, we start with you. Will they get a deal done with Derrick Henry? And what kind of deal do you think they'll get done with Derrick Henry?
I think they will. I think this is no guarantee, but I think this is another indication that, that there's a good feeling from Derrick Henry's side. And I really do think that the Titans are genuine and earnest about wanting to do it, about wanting to get it done. Everybody's going to say, well, we'd like to make a deal, and then secretly like, yeah, just play on the tag, please, and then we'll tag again next year, which is, of course, your plan, Jared. But I think the Titans – I know. I think
not exactly my plan, but close.
Okay. Well, I think they will get one done. What will it look like? I mean, it'll look like really how many deals are you really chained to anymore after a couple of years? I mean, that's what this will be. It'll be front loaded in some way. It will be the question is to me is just the number. What's the number? What that both sides can agree on? I don't anticipate Derrick Henry getting to Ezekiel Elliott level money, but I think he definitely should make more than the tag number. Most positions, the tag number is pretty good. It's not at running back.
TD,
and everything's going done, and I think it'll probably get done close to.
Yeah, I think the deal is going to get done. Obviously, the July 15th is the deadline. But for me, when I look at this, I think similar to what Rexrode thinks as far as the deal being front-loaded. Me personally, the target number is going to be that guaranteed money. I think that's really – and I'm talking about the total guarantee. That's guaranteed for performance, injury, and cap situation. And that's where it's a much more manageable number. I could see that being somewhere in the $32 to $35 million range, which is right in line with what Ezekiel Elliott's guarantee is, total, fully guaranteed. So that's where I see it going. And even with that, let's say that that's what they do, right? So you're talking about over 3 years. I think the deal is going to be a 4-year deal, but something they could get out of after the third year and have a bit of a cap penalty, but still, if they want to move on, they'll be able to do so.
So I think what I would do with Derrick Henry is, and I saw an executive in The Athletic say, an unnamed executive told Mike Sando that the Titans should just tag Derrick Henry twice, which Joe brought up. I think the Titans will do a deal with Derrick Henry where the signing bonus will be somewhere in that $22 million range, or he'll get a nice signing bonus so he gets the money up front right now, as opposed to if he plays for the tag and he has to earn it every week. That being said, I do think to TV's point, it'll be a 3-year deal, and it'll be a little bit more than $23 million, but the third year will be like a roster bonus, or it will be something that guarantees on the third day of the league year or something like that the Titans can get out of. We polled the fans yesterday and asked, how long would you be willing to commit to Derrick Henry for? And TD, overwhelmingly, 60% of the people said they would give Derrick Henry 3 years that they would be willing to commit for. With a lot of running backs, people say, don't pay running backs. It's just this running back seems different than other running backs. Turron, can you see Derrick Henry still being a productive running back and a productive leader for this team for 3 years?
I actually can. And really, to be honest with you, this whole idea of not paying running backs or not paying a particular position, I despise it. I personally think that it's a condition-by-condition basis. Let me tell you something about Derrick Henry, okay? We're talking about a guy who accounted for over 30% of this team's total offense last year. But let's talk about the 2 playoff games before the AFC Championship game. 69% is how much of the offense he accounted for. You know who else had a number similar to that? Eric Dickerson. So we're not talking about just any fly-by-the-mill running back. And I get it. He is a guy who likes to get more carries and gets better with more carries. And I think the way that he runs, because if you think about it, outside of Levante David, when he hit him in the Bucs game, and Brandon Williams caught him pretty well in the Ravens game, how many times have you seen Derrick Henry get hit? For the most part, when he's tackled, he's the one dishing out the punishment. So I don't really think that this whole concept of him just automatically breaking down is something that is going to apply. I really feel that Derrick Henry can play well going into the third year, and I think he will play well. I think he's going to be around for a third season.
I couldn't agree more, and it bothers me too. You know, obviously there's been some high-profile cases recently of bad contracts, but it's also all of them have been tied to either one significant injury or multiple injuries accumulating. Derrick Henry has a hammy that took him out of a game. That's one thing. And Jared, if you flip it around, we talk about risk with running backs. Well, let's flip it around to the anonymous GMs who are like, oh yeah, just tag him twice, and don't have to worry about him as their employee. Well, if I'm Derrick Henry and the Titans tag me twice and I'm at the top of my game at 28, which is certainly possible, I know where I'm not playing at age 28, right? So, I mean, I think you have to account for the possibility that Derrick Henry is one of those guys, and there are examples of running backs who have long, productive careers, take hits, and are fine and just are built that way. And I think to TD's point there, Derrick Henry does more dishing out than taking by a long shot.
Well, one thing that I said earlier this week was a lot of people will say Derrick Henry in 3 years won't still be productive. But a lot of people said the one thing Bill Belichick will shut down is Derrick Henry. And we all saw how that played out. So I think that I'm done kind of questioning exactly what Derrick Henry can or cannot do. Another thing that came up this week is Titans general manager John Robinson met with the media via conference call. He said not only was the team still somewhat in talks with free agent corner Logan Ryan, although he pointed out nothing was imminent, he did say the Titans had reached out, at least to some extent, on defensive end Jadeveon Clowney. Joe, we start with you. Do you think the Titans have legitimate interest in Jadeveon Clowney, and on what terms could you see Clowney coming here?
Genuine interest, absolutely. And this is where my deficiency in math, which goes back to like junior high, I'm looking at the cap number available and thinking about the draft and undrafted free agents, thinking about the fact, no question, that John Robinson likes to have flexibility. He has made several signings, some by necessity, some just finding someone like an Eric Decker, Andre Johnson in camp. I can't find the money to pay him. If let's say he's down from 20 to 17, and I know that you can do some stuff with the money to move stuff around and make it possible. But boy, it's got to be awfully close. So, do I think there's genuine interest? Yeah. Man, I would be surprised if the Titans really were in this unless they could get him for about 15. But maybe I'm either adding it wrong or underrating him.
Yeah, I agree, actually, because if you look at it, I believe before the Kamale Correa deal and Jack Crawford, I think they were at about $24 million. So they're right around $20 million now. And obviously you need $5 to $6 million to sign your rookie class. Right. So that does leave you right up against it. You look at, I think it was the Chiefs, they were $171, literally $171 below the cap. So they maneuvered some things with Sammy Watkins, and they cleared up, I think, an additional $5 million. So as Rexrode said, you can do some things to make some moves and clear up some space. But I think there's interest. I just don't know that it's a number that they could fit in there any longer. And it's unfortunate because I feel Clowney's an impact player. But the way that whole situation, it was just mishandled. And for Clowney to come into this with a $22 million per year desire, it's great to shoot high, but man, that's very high for a guy that, bottom line, people love sack numbers. And my thing is this, though. He is one of those players that you really have to watch the game and actually see how he impacts. And granted, teams are going to double team one guy, you know, regardless of who it is on every team. But I think when you have a difference maker like him, he could really help other guys on the defense. But it's just that number was too high. So I think the Titans looked at other options. And Vic Beasley was obviously a guy that was their target guy as far as second tier. And that's what they brought in.
What I think is interesting about Clowney is they could, in theory, clear up cap space by coming to an agreement with Derrick Henry based upon whatever that signing bonus is. And that would lower the $10 million cap hit that Henry is due this year. That could open up some money. I still think the asking price, it's kind of like a house. Clowney's asking price may have dropped to $17 million, but what is the accepting price with Jadeveon Clowney? I think is probably the bigger question. But if they did add Clowney, and I'm against it, but if they did add Clowney, it would be hard for me to think that they wouldn't have the best run defense maybe in the league with Daquan Jones, Rashawn Evans, Jeffrey Simmons, and Jadeveon Clowney. All are great TD against the run.
Yeah, and you can't forget the Mayor of Murfreesboro, man, and Kenny Vaccaro, you know, and even the corners. Malcolm Butler tackles very well for a corner, as does Adoree Jackson. So I think they would be in a really good situation. But that run defense would be weakened with the loss of Logan Ryan. I'm not going to overlook that. So I get it. They would definitely be strong against the run. But more importantly, this is a league that has Pat Mahomes in it. So you have to be able to impact the quarterback. And that's what Jadeveon Clowney does. They're going to need Vic Beasley to play with much more of a motor. They're going to need Kamale Correa to continue playing that motor. They're going to need Jeffrey Simmons to continue folding guards like a banquet chair, like he did to Quentin Nelson. They're going to need all of that. And I think they need to get another guy in there to play 3 or 5 technique to help them. And that's why the draft is so important. And the loss of Jarrell Casey, I'm sorry, that's going to hurt this team.
Joe, do you think Logan Ryan comes back to the Titans?
Well, I think obviously it's an either or with Clowney. If we're discounting Clowney, and I guess in my mind I'm leaving the door just slightly cracked. You know, maybe he comes down a little bit more and they can make it work. Because I do agree. I think Clowney still absolutely impacts the game and will affect the quarterback or make it much easier for your defense to affect the quarterback if you have them. I mean, they're much better if they have him. I think if they don't have him, then I think the door's opening on the idea of Logan Ryan coming back. I think the market has not been what he hoped out there, and he's still sitting there. And I don't know what the number would be. I would assume it would be lower than $10 million a year for Logan Ryan to come back. I think the Titans should absolutely be motivated to have him back. He's so versatile. He is one of the, I think, strongest voices in that locker room, and there are a lot of good ones. But I think he's right up there. And just a guy who, I mean, if you talk to Logan Ryan, like you understand, like he sees stuff before the snap that I don't think a ton of guys in this league see. And so I think there's a lot of, I understand, you know, and when they lose a corner and then he kind of gets exposed on the outside by fast guys, and we saw that some last year, but you can do a ton with him, as Dean Pease demonstrated, and I think as Mike Vrabel would continue doing. So at this point, if I had to guess yes or no, I'm going to guess yes.
Yeah, and Logan, in my opinion, needs to be brought back. And I like how you mentioned the way he's able to see things differently. That's one of the things I love to do with him. I'll corner him in the locker room sometimes, and just if there's a coverage I don't understand or I'm not sure about, I put it right here on this phone and bring it to him, and we'll break it down. And that's one of the things that I love about Logan Ryan. And if you look at when Tremaine Brock came to the Titans, he wasn't with anyone else for the full practice other than Logan Ryan, because Logan Ryan was the one that was going to get him up to speed for the defense. And when you look at overall nickel corners, I don't think there's a better all-around nickel corner in the league, because you're talking about playing against the run, you're talking about very timely with his blitzes, and you're talking about giving solid coverage. And that Ravens game, he was a key part. They used him to flush Lamar Jackson towards the sideline so that way they could condense the field for him. So this is a guy that's huge for this team, and the leadership I really think he does have to be brought back, and it may cost the signing of Clowney, but so be it.
So that's exactly what I was going to ask you guys quickly, is if you had to pick between Clowney or Logan Ryan as kind of the last free agent piece for the Titans, where would you go, TD? Obviously, I think you just said you would go with Logan Ryan. I'll go Logan Ryan too, which leaves it to Joe.
Well, I'll be the contrarian. I think if you could make it work, and again, I think a lot of Logan Ryan, but I think if you could make it work, I would take Clowney. I think Clowney could be Clowney is a force. Again, I mean, he's a problem for people. He is a game wrecker, even with the 3 sacks last year, if he's healthy. And that's another thing, man. Core injuries are, you want to make sure on stuff like that. But if it worked out, he's healthy, you like the number, I'd take Clowney.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You have to make sure that he's healthy. I had 2 sports hernia surgeries in college, and you could come back from it, but it takes a little bit. And then in addition to that, me saying I would take Logan Ryan over Clowney, and it's situational. I really don't see how they would be able to sign Clowney to the type of deal that I think is going to warrant bringing him in and still be able to do stuff in the draft and have that. Look what happened a couple years ago when Cyprian went down. They were able to go get Kenny Vaccaro.
Yep.
They won't be able to do that if they sign Clowney and have so much money tied up to that position.
One of the things John Robinson talked about on his conference call with the media was the continuity factor that the Titans, if there is no offseason program, and it doesn't look like there's going to be, but the continuity factor that bringing Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, and for the most part, the rest of the offense and a lot of the defense back is an advantage or something that's going to help them this year. TD, how important do you think that's going to be in a year that may not start until the Titans put the pads on for training camp?
I think it's huge, and it's just like anything else, right? You know, when I first moved to Nashville, I didn't know exactly how to get to the facility, right? But after I went there a couple times, now I could do it with my eyes closed. So naturally, I'm going to be faster getting there. And it's just the same with the complex offense, and that's something that really has to be factored in when you have this offense and things happening on the fly, the shifts and motions and all of that stuff. You really have to be confident and understand what it is that you have to do in order to play fast. So I think that continuity is really important. And one of the things that Tannehill did so well for this offense was keeping them in favorable situations. How many times did you see him take Derrick Henry or Deion Lewis from this side and put him on this side because he saw the blitz coming this way? That's something, unfortunately, we didn't see Mariota do. And that's one of the things that he brought to the table. And that just comes from knowing the offense. So it's huge as far as that's concerned. But I have some questions on defense because obviously it's going to be somewhat different without having Dean Pease.
That's exactly my feeling. Like, I feel great about this offense as it's constructed and in this time relative to other teams. I mean, I think they're in a great position. I mean, look around the league, so many teams that have various, big pieces in transition. And these guys are going to pick up whenever it happens and be able to go. But then you think of the other side of the ball, you think very differently. You're talking about, Jerome Casey, look, I think he absolutely was declining, but, man, that's a big loss. And they are weaker right now on defense. We don't know about Logan Ryan. And then, I think Wesley Woodyard is another guy who he had a reduced role, but, man, you could plug him in and you feel great about him, and he's a leader, and he took it like champion. I mean, that's another, really important voice in that room. And so then you switch out Dean Pease, and, man, that's a lot. And Kerry Combs too. I mean, that's a lot of transition on that side of the ball. So it's as good as you feel about the Titans offensively being able – I mean, this defensive side, they could use all this stuff right now. Vrabel's itching to hit somebody right now, and to get his hands on Vic Beasley and some of these guys and see what he's got and see what he can do, because obviously just the coaching aspect of defense is going to be very different this season.
I actually think it's going to be huge. And the biggest reason I think it's going to be big is I think life in Jacksonville is going to be totally different. I don't think any of us consider Jacksonville a real threat to the Titans this year. Houston has traded away DeAndre Hopkins, who has been the main man for Deshaun Watson. Now, Watson will still have Stills and Fuller, and guys will return for the Texans. But with a new defensive coordinator and no DeAndre Hopkins, I think that's going to be a big learning curve for Watson in Houston. And finally, Phillip Rivers, for the first time in 20 years, is on a different team. So I believe all of those things are going to be tough adjustments for teams that don't have the offseason program. And I don't feel, maybe with the exception of if Logan Ryan doesn't come back, I don't feel like the Titans have a similar type of issue they'll have to work out.
Yeah, I don't think they have a similar. Even if Logan Ryan doesn't come back, I think they're still in a better place than the other teams in the division, right? You look at Phillip Rivers and T.Y. Hilton, they have to get that timing down. You look at Phillip Rivers and Paris Campbell, they have to get that timing down. Ryan Tannehill and A.J. Brown, you already know what it is. So I think they're good offensively. Defensively, you know, like I said, they're just – I think they're in a good place, but it could be better. But when you look at, as you mentioned, Hopkins being gone, that was Deshaun Watson's security blanket. And how many times did you see him running that deep dig, slam on the brakes, reverse field, and go this way when Deshaun Watson is facing trouble in the pocket and scrambles this way? Their ability to be on the same page off schedule-wise is huge for that offense. It's gotten them out of so many problems. And that, I think, is where it's going to be a bad situation for Watson and for the Texans.
I mean, that was basically the fourth quarter of the game that won the division, right? It was basically
pretty much, yeah.
Let's go out and, you know what, I'll buy time and we'll make plays, right? And the Titans couldn't do anything about it. So I agree. I mean, I think with the Colts, I really like the Buckner ad defensively. I like that for them.
For sure.
And, you know, I think that really is going to help them a lot, going to help Darius Leonard a lot. I don't know. I'm not big on Phillip Rivers at this point. Maybe he'll prove me wrong. You know, I have a feeling the Colts may go QB here in the draft, and we'll see. But to me, I think the Titans should be the clear favorite, you know, in the division as it stands. And that's still with a weakened defense that, you know, I think we all think they're going to address from here.
I would say if the Colts go quarterback, that's kind of an interesting idea because they wouldn't be picking, I think, until the second round, having used their first-round pick for Buckner. So that means maybe unless they move up. But even in that case, you're kind of thinking maybe Jacob Eason, Jake Fromm, Jalen Hurts, and we're not thinking some of the top-tier quarterbacks that could be coming to Indianapolis, which would make sense with Rivers as the starter for a year and then turning it over to a guy like Fromm. They also, if they go quarterback, could then use Jacoby Brissett to somebody to use as a trade piece, which takes me to backup quarterback because John Robinson seemed very excited about the idea of Logan Woodside, 2 years in the practice squad after being drafted by the Bengals out of Toledo. He did spend a half a season or a quarter of a season or however long the AAF was played for. Logan Woodside was a starting quarterback in the AAF. We've seen him in training camp. We've seen him in the preseason. They seem to be comfortable, maybe, with Logan Woodside backing up Tannehill. Some names are still out there, including guys like Jameis Winston and Cam Newton, or other guys who maybe make more sense like Blake Bortles or Matt Moore. Joe, what do you think the Titans do at backup quarterback?
It's tough. Look, I think Logan Woodside last year, like especially in camp, I remember being like, man, he's like a lot better than I thought he was. You know, I mean, he's improving. So I do think they feel more comfortable with him. I think they'd still feel more comfortable with a proven backup. My dream is for Blake Bortles to be the Titans backup with Jarrell Casey still on the Titans. So, you know, that would have been fun. You know? Casey took a shot at him every chance he got back in the day. But, you know, at this point, again, it's like the question is hard to answer because I want to see what else they're investing in until then. It may have to be Woodside. At this point, I guess I would think that they would still go sign someone.
For me, the question is simple. It's simple to answer that, and I believe strongly it'll be Woodside. Every single time Mike Vrabel was asked about quarterbacks, he'll shout out Tannehill, he would shout out Mariota, but he would also say Woodside. And then, as you mentioned, John Robinson mentioned Woodside as well, and they like what he brings from a preparation standpoint. As Rexrode said, he played really well in training camp, and even during the preseason, he showed some things. And when you look at this whole picture, as far as going back to the continuity, guess what also has to be a part of that continuity? your backup quarterback. So now let's say you bring in Blake Bortles, right? He has to learn a whole new scheme. And granted, it'll probably have similar things to what he saw with the Rams with McVay, but it's all new. So my thing is, Woodside makes sense from all perspectives, not to mention he's not an expensive part of the roster. We just talked about how money is going to be tight. A backup quarterback's not going to come into this city and be cheap. So now you're having to just look at the whole picture, and I think Woodside makes the most sense.
So I think it will be Bortles. I would probably, to me, it's a coin flip between Woodside or Bortles. If something happens to Ryan Tannehill, you're probably not going to win with either guy. And I don't know if Woodside gives you a better chance than Bortles. I'm kind of holding out hope, though, that the Jameis Winston asking price goes down, 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 down. And maybe you get Jameis Winston on a 1-year, $4 million deal. I don't know. I'm sure Jameis would rather go somewhere else. But he's running out of options at this point.
So Jameis could do to Tannehill what Tannehill just did to Mariota. They could just keep going this year after year, bring in like a new backup who –
And Mariota could do it to Carr.
There you go.
And then Carr could go do it to somebody else.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, when you think about you think about the investment they had to make. We talk about every year with Mariota, right? It's like you got to keep upgrade. Castle, you got to upgrade. Okay, Gabbard's a little better. Gabbard, you got to upgrade. You get Tannehill. It's just – I mean, it can't be a priority anymore. It's got to be – if you do sign someone, it's got to be cheap. You've got to – I mean, you build a roster. There are some things you're just going to have to say, we just – can't afford for this guy to get hurt, and that Ryan Tannehill is one of those guys.
And you're not getting a quality backup for cheap anyway. I mean, I find it hard to believe you get a quality backup for under $7-8 million, frankly.
That's going to do it for us. I want to thank everybody for joining us here on Game on Demand as we broke down the Titans with the Titans Roundtable. We'll have many more of these, of course, as long as this pandemic continues, and even after that, probably. But everybody, please, please, please stay inside and please stay safe. TD, thank you. Of course, talking with TD out now. Jalen Hurts has a chat with TD. And I will say this, I have listened to the chat and we have played clips from the chat on our show. We're talking backup quarterback Jalen Hurts. I know it doesn't make a lot of sense. I know he probably won't be there when the Titans could pick him in the 5th round, but
Fifth.
I got a soft spot for Jalen Hurts. And so if you listen to that interview on Talking with TD, surely you'll feel that way. Joe, thank you as well for joining us.
All right. Thanks, guys. Great time with you.
That's going to do it for our Titans Roundtable. Check back for more Game on Demand content. And, of course, be sure to listen to ESPN 102.5 The Game.